I'll just add again, real quick before I take questions. Obviously, very serious incident. Very tragic for all, as I stated earlier. A lot of measures go in to try to resolve these situations as safely and peacefully as possible. It takes a lot of resources, but our men and women very good at their job, and they know to take things slow. And it takes a lot of personnel. They were on scene for this incident for about an hour before the suspect fled out the front door. When a subject is contained to a residence, it's very easy to take things slow, get all the resources we can from negotiators, any other special resources that we might need. But once you take flight into the neighborhood armed with knives, it kind of changes the scenario a little bit and puts the public at risk. And our men and women have a duty that they swore to protect the community. And as you saw from the video, there was the one attempted carjacking that traumatized the family of a young juvenile. And shortly thereafter, it was real quick, but the attempted home invasion of a residence that was nearby to when we finally located the subject in a backyard where we were trying to contain him to that yard, but it was an open yard with a fence, and he was jumping fences clearly. But then obviously we had several less lethal tools that we tried to use. As you saw from the video, at least 3 attempts of a less lethal 40 millimeter projectile, and obviously the use of the canine as well. In that backyard alone, you had a total of 6 officers. I think 5 of them were sergeants, and 3 of them were armed with less lethal options. So wanting to resolve this issue peacefully as possible, but we asked our men and women to put themselves in the face of danger to protect the public, from these violent incidents. And there's some things you just can't avoid once, individual actions start to bring that deadly assault to our officers. So that being said, I'll take some questions.
What kind of interactions have officers had with this individual before, and if you don't mind highlighting who the suspect is as well?
I do not know the complete history. I do know, obviously, the individual was on parole for homicide. I think that's well stated in the news. But that's the extent of my history of him. I do know there was mention later that of some mental health issues that he was possibly going through, but I haven't verified any of that information. It's just from the family.
How many shots were fired, and by just one officer or 2?
One officer, and from just hearing it sounds like about 4 or 5. But once again, it's MSP's investigation, so I don't have the specific details, but my ears tell me it was 4 to 5 shots.
And you kind of mentioned about the mental health. Was it known that the suspect had mental health issues, and can you detail any of those?
At the time the officers are getting the information, they're getting that he's threatened to kill his family, he's threatening to kill himself, so I'm sure they're drawing conclusions that obviously there could be a mental health component to this, but at that point they're focused on their job. Step 1, let's try to contain the subject to this house, to protect him from his family, protect the neighbors, and all these other measures to try to get in place before we can think about getting a mental health therapist, get our negotiators and all that. We have to isolate the incident first, and we just didn't have the time because he bolted out the front door.
Do you know if he had received mental health treatment in the past prior to the
I don't know.
Okay.
How's Diego doing?
Diego's recovering. Luckily could have been a lot worse, but he is recovering, and believe his not only the stab that he got to the head, has potentially got stabbed in the vest. So I'm glad that we have those vests to help keep our canine safe. But we'll MSP's investigation, so they'll get more details on exactly if the vest had some puncture wounds in it or not.
Is there a chance he returns?
Yeah, very good chance, I believe. So.
On that note, was Diego involved in the last officer-involved shooting?
Not that I recall. No.
Can you go into detail about the less than lethal options that were used? You mentioned the 40 millimeter launcher. What is that? And then we saw the puff of green smoke or dust. Was that one of the options that was used?
As I said, it's a 40 millimeter launcher. It launches these less lethal projectiles, trying to get pain compliance. Okay, the green stuff you're seeing, it's a marking. So obviously, if we use it, we want to know that if we had impact, kind of if you fled from us, be able to identify you later, things like that. So we used it 3 separate times, one on 1,000 block of Alpine, 2 at the incident where the OIS occurred. Other less lethal option was canine. If the canine is able to changed the individual's behavior at that point. This issue is resolved, and it's a win. But it wasn't able to. Obviously, the canine was stabbed, and at that point, it escalates things.
So it's a beanbag with a...
Picture a racquetball cut in half, like it was explained to me as well. A racquetball cut in half, and it's launched out of the launcher and direct contact. From what I knowledge, it can launch up to 100 plus feet. So it's something that's very versatile, to use in that situation. You've got the officers are running around this neighborhood trying to locate the subject as he's running through, passing several homes, and potential for putting the public at risk. So valuable tool, especially for an individual that's running and jumping fences and running through yards and all those things. And we're trying to contain him and get him in custody as quick as possible, so we don't have a situation where he bursts into a home and takes a family hostage or the unknown.
Have police been called to that residence in the past? Have you had any other encounters with him, issues?
Not verified, just other than some of the reports, just to get up to speed on some things, that it was described as a trouble house, that we had been there before. I've seen some reports there in our FileMaker reporting system, but I don't know anything specific to what those complaints were.
From the moment your officers respond to the moment of the deadly officer involved shooting, how long was that?
I believe we were on scene pretty quickly. I'd say roughly, don't quote me specifically, but I think we're on scene about 1:20-ish, 1:20 p.m. And the incident in the yard was, I think, right about 20 minutes before 3. So, as I stated earlier, we were on this incident for just over an hour when he took off running out the front door. So, incident like this, once again, he's throwing these Molotov cocktails at our officers. He's threatening to stab his family. He's threatening to stab us. We have a very wide perimeter on this. We have visual containment from over 100 feet away, right? That's why he's able to run out the front door. We're not able to get everything set up before he launches out the front door, but we have to make sure we're safe. We spent over 40 minutes trying to evacuate family, neighbors, telling them to shelter in place, just standard procedure stuff that we do to make sure everyone's safe, getting medical staging, fire staging due to the potential fire and the potential injuries with the knives. So there's a lot that goes into a critical incident that our men and women are, which they do very well. They're getting all these things in motion while trying to resolve this issue as well. So a lot goes into it.
And he was a parole absconder, is that right? I think we read in May.
I don't know. I don't have that information, sorry.
Does Network 180 work out on the weekends? You still have the partnership?
We still have the partnership. Yep. Once again, I heard some rumors on that. And once again, our co-response team, it's a great team. It's very beneficial. But this is a situation where this individual is not even contained yet. He's still running through the neighborhood. But once again, if this is contained to a house, if we can tap into any resource we can, absolutely. Because the whole goal is to resolve this without violence.
Chief, a real quick thing, is that video of him throwing the Molotov cocktail, is that as officers are initially arriving on the first scene?
Yes. They're kind of creeping up the alley. Just their job is just to try to contain him to the house. They're not going to try to press in the house. They're not going to try to escalate the situation by any means, just to try to...
This is at the start of the...
Yeah, at the start of the incident, yes.
He goes back inside at that point?
Correct.
Okay, and then so after the incident, the shots are fired at the end, can you just speak to a little bit his movements towards the end there? He was coming at your officers with a knife, correct?
Correct.
Can you just speak to what that knife looked like?
I didn't see the knife. Obviously, it's MSP's investigation, so I don't want to go into details of that because I don't have them. But obviously, from the video, if you could see it, or when you get the chance to slow it down yourself, the officer makes an attempt with the less lethal round. The individual tucks back behind the stairs, for cover, and then another officer, a sergeant, is dipping in to try to get a better view to deliver a second round. As he's doing that, the individual is starting to charge. You see that the sergeant delivers the round, I believe, as he's backpedaling to get out of there, and then part of our training, you got to have a lethal threat option, right, to protect everyone else there, and that's when the other officer discharged his firearm.
Can you speak to, Chief, too, in terms of how quickly they can close that distance with a knife?
It's quick. I think during my early training days of being a recruit, they talked about you can close 21 feet in a matter of a couple seconds, right? And I don't have the distance of what that was, but it was shorter than that. So it happens real fast. So.
Obviously, today's Wednesday, this officer home shooting happened on Saturday. Can you kind of highlight why it took this long to be out here and explain what kind of happened?
Just want to make sure we're thorough. You had the initial scene, you had the flight path, and then you had where things ended. You had the attempt carjacking and the attempt home invasion that happened in between. So you have a lot of body camera footage to piece through and make sure that we've got the best picture for you guys to kind of write your story. And I don't want to get into rushing these incidents. If there's not a big cry that there's something that's not adding up, I want to make sure that we do a thorough job.
Anything else you'd like to say about when it comes to mental health and crime?
We all know mental health is a serious issue, and there's a lot of resources that are available. Then there's a lot of people that don't get the resources they need, I imagine. Our men and women want any tool they can to help them do their job better, but they're not doctors, they're not therapists, but they're pretty amazing people that are compassionate about the citizens of this city, and they're trying to resolve things as peacefully as possible. No officer wants to go through this, whether it's a justified shooting or not. You're going to go through a lot of things, when you pull that trigger, and they know that. And that the fact that they still go out there willing to do it is commendable. But yes, across the country, mental health is a serious issue, and all we can try to do is, equip our men, equip our agency with any type of added knowledge that help us do our job better.
The mother expressed regret calling you guys, saying that if she hadn't called you, her son might not have died. Something else bad might have happened. How do you square that, and how do you hope people handle these situations in the future if they're afraid that the outcome might be similar? Yeah,
and my heart goes out to her for that. I actually sat on the church steps, a block away, and she told me that as I sat next to her. You're not human if it doesn't hit you in the heart, right? It's you want to go and help mom or a family, but also when things are escalated out of your control and you have to have a response, we have to protect the community, and when we put ourselves in front of danger, we have to protect ourselves. So I still want people to call. I know that's easier said than done in this situation. I don't have any magic words for his mom. But it's just unfortunate. I'm kind of speechless to a certain extent on it, but I definitely don't want to see things in that way, but I also don't know how else we could have handled that situation, knowing we're expected to try to resolve this and contain this individual to this yard and get him in custody as soon as possible before somebody else becomes a victim.
This is kind of the internal question. 6 officers, 1 guy in a backyard. He's making his way toward what I understand is the only exit. Officers are between him and that. How do you make the distinction between he might be just fleeing and continuing his chase that we've been doing all morning versus he's rushing at us with intent?
I guess I would say I don't agree with that. He's got a fence that he can jump to the south, he can jump to the west, he can run back to the east, and I think there's a couple officers over there, but it's not 6. So there's options. Obviously, we don't know the intent, and I don't know. But I think that he was hopping fences and running through. I think there was other options, and then from the looks of the video, it was clear on that obviously he's advancing towards the officers for whatever reason, and he has a knife in his hand.
To clarify on the text, there's only one officer on paid administrative leave, or?
Correct.
Any damages from the Molotov cocktails?
We had to extinguish it with our extinguisher, but I don't think there was any serious damage to the cruiser. It strikes the cruiser, and then it falls off to the driver's side. I believe the target, once again, I'm making assumptions, I guess, but the officer, I believe, was standing in the door frame of his car to where the Molotov cocktail was thrown. So he's actually getting out of the door of his car when it's coming across and hitting. So
Everybody good?
Yes.
all right, thank you.